The Water Campus is a 35-acre economic development project. It's a real estate development project just south of downtown Baton Rouge. It is currently in progress. Construction is underway. And once built out, we hope that this will be home to professionals, researchers, scientists, engineers, all working around the critical issues of coastal and deltaic science in our community, and a place where we hope that world-class researchers from around the world will be drawn to and spur economic development in our area. Primarily, they'll be looking at the scientists and researchers who are working on that campus and the professionals, engineers, as I mentioned. We'll be looking at issues related to our coast and the deltaic area that we live in. As you know, there are several significant issues facing Louisiana. We are losing about a football field of land every hour, and there are a lot of issues that need to be informed by sound, reliable science in order to address those critical problems. So we hope that this campus will be the place where that world-class science is taking place. Well, the first two buildings on the campus are underway. That's a new headquarters for the State Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. That building will be complete in August, as will later this year a building that LSU is building that will be home to a small-scale version of the Lower Mississippi River. It'll be a research facility. That'll be complete at the end of this year. And then the additional commercial, office, research buildings on the campus will continue to be built out over the next several years.
Okay, and what will the Water Campus impact in Louisiana?
Well, there'll be two major impacts. One is that, as I mentioned, this will be the place where sound, reliable science is developed and data-driven solutions that will hopefully inform our policymakers and our lawmakers at the Capitol who are making those critical decisions about which projects need to happen along our coast. It'll also be a place where individuals from around the world who need this type of science and need this type of data come for that information. There will also be a huge economic development impact, not only on Baton Rouge, but also on Louisiana more generally. Once built out, we hope that the campus will be home to 4,000 to 5,000 employees. A lot of those will be new jobs, and so we imagine that there will be a significant economic impact.
I'm going to introduce our speaker. We have a fantastic speaker. We have this wonderful project going on in downtown Baton Rouge, in between LSU and downtown. People drive by and go, "What is going on over there?" And you can see it and kind of wondering what it is. We get a lot of questions about it. We have a lot of visitors in from Atlanta and from other markets, and they drive down there and go, "What are they building over there?" Well, we're going to find out more about that today. And we have one of the most fascinating projects that's happened in Baton Rouge in my lifetime. I was born and raised here, and I haven't seen anything that's happened like this since I've been in Baton Rouge, so we're very excited to have it. We have Miss Beverly Moore Haydell. She's with the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. She has a very, very interesting resume, and she's the Civic Leadership Initiatives Director for the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. She's overseeing the Water Campus, so she's the expert for us on that. It's a 35-acre gathering place for scientists and engineers working on deltaic issues, so everything to do with water and what it's going to do to Louisiana going down the river. So we'll hear a lot about that. She's also spearheading an effort to create a treatment center for people with mental illnesses and substance abuse problems. And she's leading an initiative to introduce new mobility and transportation options to Baton Rouge. So those are three big projects that she's working on for BRAF, so we're very excited that she's doing that. She's also, before she came to work for the foundation, she serves as the special counsel for Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. She was a lead attorney for the Mitt Romney campaign for president, so that's pretty fascinating in itself. She spent several years at a top Washington, D.C. law firm, and she worked as an investment banking group for Goldman Sachs. So unbelievable resume, so congratulations on that. She has an undergraduate degree in economics from Harvard, and she earned a law degree from Stanford Law School, so very diverse. She was also a college basketball player and scored 7 three-pointers against the rival Brown, so that's pretty impressive as well. So she was very successful in that part of it. So in all facets of her life, she's been very successful. So please join me in welcoming Miss Beverly Moore Haydell, and she'll do our talk for us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is my first time attending a BBB event, and it's really impressive, the group you have and the diversity of interests and professionals that are represented here today. So thank you for having me. I wanted to first start off by talking a little bit about the Baton Rouge Area Foundation as an organization. I've been with the foundation about 2 years, and I kept finding that every time I went to speak somewhere, I would get to the end of my talk and someone would come up to me and say, that was a really fascinating project, but what exactly does BRAF do? So I feel like a lot of people in the community kind of think of it as a black hole. So I wanted to start off by just telling you a little bit about what we do. We're a traditional community foundation. Community foundations exist throughout the country. We've been around for just over 50 years. And as foundations go, we are fairly large in terms of how we compare to our peer organizations around the country. We have about $550 million in assets that we manage. That includes not only the money that our donors invest with us by setting up funds, but also significant real estate portfolio holdings, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. We have close to 600 members. Those are people throughout the community, throughout the state, people outside of Louisiana who choose to do their philanthropy giving through our foundation. In 2015, we took in about $35 million in assets and gave away about $25 million to nonprofits, primarily focused in South Louisiana, but we do a lot of work outside of Louisiana and even outside of the United States as well. I would say in terms of how community foundations are traditionally set up, there are two things about how we're organized that I think make us particularly unique. First of all is what I do. John mentioned that I head up our Civic Leadership Initiatives Department. That's sort of a fancy way of saying I do projects. So most of the big projects that you read about in the paper with the BRAF name on them, I, along with John Spain, who I work very closely with, we kind of manage those projects day to day. So you'll see here some of the projects we're currently working on. Our latest project is called New Mobility. That's really looking at how can we make people in Baton Rouge less reliant on the car as the only way to get from point A to point B. So how can we introduce things like bike share, light rail, passenger rail from Baton Rouge to New Orleans? How can we kind of increase the mix of transportation options that we have? The water campus that I'll talk about today, the LSU Lakes project, that's been in the paper a lot, looking at how can we prevent the beautiful lakes that are around LSU's campus from drying up and dying. If you've driven past them lately, you'll notice there's lily pads everywhere. It's hard to see the water in a lot of places. So that's an ongoing project. And then we have two big projects that are related to healthcare. One is looking at autism and the kind of surge of autism throughout our country and what we could do to provide more resources to families in our community. And then the Baton Rouge Health District. And that's really looking at how can we get our key healthcare providers to work together more and figure out how they can deliver better care and serve our community better. And then to the right of the org chart, you'll see that we have something called Commercial Properties Realty Trust. So it's kind of a long story, but a couple decades ago, a very wealthy individual in our community named Wilbur Marvin left us his entire real estate holding company. And it was a development company, had lots of real estate assets, strip malls, office buildings, and he left that company to us, and we still manage it as a real estate investment company. And so we have a whole separate kind of organization within the foundation that does real estate development, and it's been, they're a key partner with the foundation in the water campus, and they really allow our foundation to take on projects that often have a real estate component, and it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of the work that we do. So that's just sort of an overview of who we are. Moving on to the water campus, I'll just briefly talk a little bit about the history behind this project and how we got to where we are today. In the years following Hurricane Katrina, former Senator Mary Landrieu called together a group of key stakeholders in South Louisiana, public officials, academics, community leaders, individuals from the Baton Rouge Area Foundation were included in that group. And her message was a very serious one, which was we can't avoid the fact that hurricanes are going to continue to plague our state. It's something that we have to deal with and we're going to face every year. But there are things related to our coast and what's happening along the coastline that we can do something about. And it's going to be really important going forward that the decisions that we make in terms of how to deal with our coast, how to protect it, how to restore it, which projects we take on, those projects have to be informed by science and by sound data. At that time, most of the work that was happening along our coast was really informed by nothing more than politics. So you had 64 parish presidents all kind of lobbying and jockeying for their pet projects in their parish. And then the legislators go to the Capitol and they represent their parish presidents and try to get their projects done. And Senator Landrieu had kind of sat back from afar and seen this process work and studied a lot in terms of other countries and what they were doing and how they made decisions. And she knew that going forward, if we didn't get sound data and science to inform our decisions, we were going to be in real trouble. So she suggested that a delegation of officials, individuals from our organization were included, travel over to the Netherlands. For those of you who've been there, who know about that country, they are a country that is in the Delta. So most of their country is surrounded by or infiltrated by water. And throughout their history, they've had to deal with how do we live with water and how do we protect ourselves from the water around us. So they've had horrible flooding, just like we've had flooding in Louisiana. They have a series of dams and dikes that literally protect their country from washing away. And in the Netherlands, in a small town called Delft, they've created the world's leading water institute in the world. It's called Deltares, and they have hundreds of world-class researchers there that are studying each and every day what is happening around us, how do we live with water, how do we protect ourselves from water, and how do we make the right decisions to protect our residents and our country. So she took this delegation there and she said, I want this to come to Louisiana. We can have this. We as a state are facing the exact same problems that they face here in the Netherlands, and the Dutch have developed the science to inform sound decision making there, and I want this to be how we make decisions in Louisiana about how to protect our coast. So what came out of that was the creation of a research institute called the Water Institute of the Gulf. The Baton Rouge Area Foundation provided $10 million of seed funding to get that organization started. They hired their own CEO and executive director, and Congressman Garrett Graves was one of the leading advocates for the creation of that organization. He worked very closely with the board that created the Water Institute, and he was the head of Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, which is the state agency in charge of our coast. And so the state really endorsed the Water Institute of the Gulf, and in fact put it into legislation that that research organization would be the sole provider of research and data to the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. So as you can see here, this is kind of a statement of the mission of the Water Institute of the Gulf, and it's really all about having science rather than politics to inform the decisions that we make about our coast. If you read some of the articles about what's happening along our coast, some of the statistics are pretty staggering, even to me, and I read this stuff every day, but we are losing about a football field of land each hour. And when you look at what's happening with sea level rise, it's only going to get worse. And so a lot of the projects that are happening along our coast in terms of river diversions and how can we build barrier islands, those are all projects that the scientists at the Water Institute of the Gulf are working on. One of the things that came out of the creation of the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority was that now, every 4 years, we have what's called a Coastal Master Plan. And it's a plan that includes all of the projects that need to happen along our coast in the next 4 years. And it's sort of, each year, the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority goes through and prioritizes those projects and says, you know, these 100 projects need to happen to protect our coast, and here's the priority list. And they look to the scientists at the Water Institute of the Gulf to help them make those decisions, to run the models and figure out how is this particular project going to affect this community, what's going to happen to this river with sea level rise, all of those types of questions. So once the Water Institute of the Gulf was created and it's up and running, they have dozens of researchers doing great work, and now as they've grown, not only are they providing research and data to our state agency, but they are exporting their knowledge throughout the world. So the scientists who work at the Water Institute of the Gulf, and currently they're located in downtown Baton Rouge, they travel routinely to Latin America, Vietnam, the Mekong Delta, to the Netherlands. They meet with other researchers and other scientists, and they compare notes in terms of here's what's happening in Louisiana, what's happening in your country, what's happening in your delta, what are the common problems, how can we work together to solve both of our problems. So they are truly becoming very quickly a world-class exporter and resource for knowledge. So we started thinking about, we have this great asset in Baton Rouge now with the Water Institute of the Gulf. We have scientists, people want to move here to work there. We need a home for them. So about 5 to 10 years ago, we came up with a concept of the Water Campus. And the Water Campus is a real estate development project that will be located just south of downtown. It is a 35-acre site that was really kind of put together through a public-private partnership. So the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, our real estate development company, Commercial Properties Realty Trust, and the city parish, as well as the state. So those 35 acres, some of the land was donated to us by the state, some's donated by the city parish, and other land we've just slowly kind of accumulated by going up and buying it up. What we hope the Water Campus will be, and is already becoming, we'll kind of get to current construction in a moment, is a research park, a home where researchers, scientists, engineers, professionals, all of whom are studying and working on issues related to our coast, deltaic issues, water sciences, can come together and sort of, not to be too cliche, but work in one watering hole. So they're all kind of working together and learning from each other and feeding off each other's knowledge. So we've developed a master plan, and construction is already underway. Here is, just to kind of give you a sense of where this is in context, this blue line here is the Nicholson corridor that connects downtown Baton Rouge to LSU's campus. And number 7 here in the bottom right is I-10. So just as you go under I-10, the Water Campus is located there to your right. It's right across from the Sheriff's Association building. This is a map of the current master plan for the development. The building that you see out over the Mississippi River, for those of you who have kind of gotten up close and personal with this geographic area, know that right now there's an old city dock out on the Mississippi. If you drive across I-10, you see it. It's basically falling into the river. Our plan is to resuscitate that old city dock and turn it into a state-of-the-art, iconic building that will be home to the Water Institute of the Gulf. This will be their new headquarters. The building will also house a conference center so that people from CPRA, the Water Institute of the Gulf, others who are working on the campus can rent out that conference space and hold conferences overlooking the Mississippi River. It'll be an event space. People can have weddings there. I have a rendering of the building in just a few slides. As you'll see, it's hard to tell the legend down here on the right, but the campus is not just going to be research space. So it's going to be a truly mixed-use campus. Our goal is to have this campus activated 24/7. So we've included some residential there, and for those of you who've been downtown, you know the number of residential units downtown is growing, so this area is kind of booming from a development perspective. Residential, office, retail, we're planning to have a hotel on the campus. We really want this to be a destination and a place where people come, from young school children to PhD students, to learn about what's happening along the Mississippi River and along our coast. Currently, we have 2 buildings on the campus that are under construction and are soon to be completed, and a 3rd building, that iconic building out on the river, we hope construction will begin very soon. We've been delayed somewhat due to the high river levels. The Corps of Engineers heavily regulates what happens along the levees and along the river, but we have the go-ahead now to start construction. This is just kind of a cool 3D rendering of what the campus is going to look out at full completion. We expect that it will be 5 to 7 years before the campus is fully built out. Certainly that just depends on demand for leasing and who wants to move onto the campus. But as you can see, it's going to be a very busy and dense campus. The first 2 buildings that I'll talk about and show pictures of are the 2 buildings on the left, the LSU building and the CPRA headquarters. So this is the building that is currently being constructed. If you drive down Nicholson, look to your right, you can get a pretty good view of it. The building will be delivered in August, and as I mentioned, this will be the new headquarters for the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, for that state agency. And really, we recognized early on that if you talk to any professionals and engineers who do construction work along our coast, big projects along our coast, this is kind of the honeypot. They all do work and have contracts with CPRA. CPRA is who implements that coastal master plan. So we knew that there would be a lot of synergy and a lot of energy around having them on our campus. And so they're kind of in the heart of the campus. They're right on the main street, and we assume that everyone else is going to want to be near them. So we're excited to deliver that building to them in August. The second building that is under construction and will be delivered by the end of this year is a building that LSU will own and run, and it's called the River Modeling Center. This is something that is modeled after a building on the Del Torres campus over in the Netherlands. And it's going to be just fascinating. When it opens, I recommend everyone trying to go see it. It is going to house a 90-foot by 120-foot small-scale version of the lower Mississippi River. There'll be walkways over the river, and this is a place where scientists and researchers can actually simulate what's happening to the Mississippi River. So they can say, you know, if we divert the river 6 inches this way, what's going to happen to sedimentation? What's going to happen to erosion along the banks? And they can test out different scenarios and actually see how that's going to affect the Mississippi River and other rivers for that matter. So we expect that this will be a place where researchers, not only from Louisiana, but from around the world, want to come and use this facility. And it'll be a great learning asset for our community. This campus is going to be very open to students, young and old, coming and learning about what's happening. So it'll all be very interactive and open. And the third building I mentioned, this is the great, cool building that's going to be over the Mississippi River. This is a rendering here on the left. It's kind of a lantern that goes out into the Mississippi River. It's hard to tell scale from that picture, but the boardwalks that go around the back of that building are about 20 to 30 feet wide. So it's going to be a great place to go get a glass of wine, enjoy the Mississippi River. We're going to have a cafe out there. There's going to be a restaurant on the campus as well. So this is not just going to be sort of a research facility that only those scientists get to use. This is going to be a community asset that we hope people will really enjoy, and it'll be a place where people can get up close and personal with the river. And just one other quick fact about this building. I mentioned that this is a true public-private partnership. A lot of the buildings on the campus will be financed by our real estate development company. We'll lease them up. You know, when we get a certain percentage lease, we'll pull the trigger and build them. This building is primarily funded by state dollars. The previous administration made a huge commitment to the water campus. We are very thankful for that. We have north of $15 million in state funding that's going towards this project. We're tracking that through capital outlay this session. It's going well so far. But yeah, it's truly a state and city and private partnership that's gone into this campus, and in particular that building. And then this is just, we have a lot of commercial office buildings that are going to be on this campus. I don't have renderings of all of them available in this slideshow, but this is one of the buildings that we expect will go online pretty quickly, certainly probably by the spring of next year. Just to give you a sense of kind of the modern feel of the office buildings that's going to be on this campus. We're working with a leasing firm out of New Orleans called Corporate Realty. They're out there every day calling on businesses, everything from law firms to environmental companies to other engineering firms to try to get them to come onto the campus. And so far the energy has been really, really great. And then before I end, I just want to mention, you saw in that video the streetcar going down Nicholson. Some of you have probably read about that project. That's something we're also working closely with the city on. The city was lucky enough to obtain federal funding to start planning that 3.1-mile streetcar that'll start at the state capitol and end at LSU. And that will go right by the water campus. There'll be a stop right there at the entrance to the water campus. This is the kind of planned route. And they're currently in the process of securing additional federal funding. Some local funds will need to be raised, and they're working on those plans. But it seems like that project construction could be underway as early as 2018, which is very exciting. And that will just further kind of activate that corridor. This is one of the latest renderings from the consultants of what that streetcar might look like. So just one other thing that's happening along that corridor. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope this was interesting.
I told y'all there was a lot going on with this, and it's pretty fascinating. And to think about that coming to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, of all the places it could have been, it's pretty spectacular. So hats off to state local government brass, the mayor's office, and the senators that were involved in making all of that happen, because it's pretty impressive. And I think the long-term economic impact for Baton Rouge is substantial. And more important to that, if you're a Louisianan or just the Gulf Coast area in general, not only that, I think based on everything that I've read, it'll impact not just what we're doing in the Gulf, but it'll impact what we're doing as far as supplying information all over the world. And Beverly talked to that as well. But pretty impressive, pretty exciting to be happening right here in Baton Rouge. And I do think that Beverly said the number one thing we can do is get the word out there that it's happening. And because it is, I mean, every time I drive by there and I have somebody in my car from out of town, they go, "What is that?" And there's parts of that that are an eyesore today, correct? But especially when you come over that bridge and you see the old dock, you have the vision of what that's going to turn out to be. One of the things that Baton Rouge does not have enough of is great views of the river. It's going to be exciting to come across there and be able to have a glass of wine and sit out there and enjoy that. So thank y'all for all that y'all are doing to make that happen.
The website, it's www.thewatercampus.org, and we have information about the campus, what's going on the campus, the science, the Water Institute of the Gulf. So that's a great place that you can visit to get more information.